Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Omicron coronavirus variants continuing to spread around the world, with cases detected in nearly 50 countries and nearly one-third of U.S. states. Omicron's proliferation has led dozens of nations to impose new travel restrictions. Beginning today, all international travelers entering the United States will have to take a coronavirus test 24 hours within their departure or prove that they've recovered from COVID-19 in the last 90 days. It's still unknown whether Omicron poses more risk than earlier forms of the coronavirus, but top U.S. infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci said Sunday there are early indications it doesn't lead to more severe disease. The World Health Organization has so far not reported any deaths linked to the new variant. It's unknown if Omicron will overtake Delta, the highly transmissible variant which now accounts for most of the world's infections. Here in the U.S., COVID-19 hospitalizations continue to rise in a post-Thanksgiving holiday surge with an average of nearly 110,000 infections reported each day. Another series of demonstrations against COVID restrictions took place over the weekend, including a rally of 40,000 people in Vienna, Austria, where a lockdown is starting today, and vaccinations are set to become mandatory in February. In Belgium, protesters clashed with police in Brussels as they marched towards the EU headquarters. Demonstrations also took place in Spain, Germany, the Netherlands, and Australia. In Germany, outgoing Chancellor Angela Merkel used her final video podcast as the country's leader to urge residents to get vaccinated amidst a fourth COVID wave.
Nehmen Sie das tückische Virus ernst.
Take the malicious virus seriously. Right now, the new Omicron variant seems to be more infectious than the previous ones. Get yourself vaccinated. It doesn't matter if it is a first shot or a booster. Every vaccine helps.
Germany is essentially banning unvaccinated people from public life. In Jordan, a court sentenced 5 senior health officials to 3 years in prison Sunday over the deaths of 10 COVID patients after a state hospital experienced an oxygen shortage in March. The deaths triggered anti-government protests across Jordan. In the United States, the parents of the suspected Michigan high school shooter are being held on a bond of $500,000 each after they were arrested on Saturday after a manhunt in a Detroit warehouse. James and Jennifer Crumbly pleaded not guilty to charges of involuntary manslaughter over last Tuesday's mass shooting, which killed 4 students and wounded 7 other students and staff at Oxford High School. Their 15-year-old son was charged last week with terrorism, murder, and other counts. James Crumbly and his son went to buy the gun used in the massacre just days beforehand, and both parents are accused of giving their son access to a firearm, even as he displayed obvious signs he was thinking about committing violent crimes, and he was only 15 years old. In Burma, a court sentenced deposed civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi to 4 years in prison. She's accused of incitement and violating COVID rules, which have been blasted by rights groups as fabricated charges aimed at suppressing opposition. It's the first verdicts of the nearly dozen charges leveled against Aung San Suu Kyi by the military junta, which overthrew her government in a February 1st coup. The Biden administration is expected to announce a diplomatic boycott of the upcoming Beijing Winter Olympics. The move would mean U.S. athletes will still compete, but no U.S. officials will attend the Games, and is intended to send a signal over human rights abuses in China. It also would come amidst growing concerns for star tennis player Peng Shuai, whose social media post revealing her sexual assault by a former vice premier was censored, and who some say is being coerced by the Chinese government. In Indonesia, at least 15 people are dead and over 24 are missing after Mount Sumeru, one of the island nation's most active volcanoes, erupted Saturday, spewing blistering hot ash and volcanic gas into the sky over the East Java province. Some 3,000 homes, dozens of schools have been damaged. Over 1,700 people have been evacuated. Rescue operations were suspended today as Mount Sumeru continues to spew hot clouds of ash. In India, a funeral was held for the 15 civilians killed by security forces in the northeastern border state of Nagaland over the weekend. The majority of the killings happened on Saturday after security forces say they mistook a group of mine workers for armed fighters. More people were killed in ensuing protests. The state's chief minister is demanding the Indian government repeal a contested law which allows security forces to kill with impunity in parts of India. Pope Francis returned to the Greek island of Lesbos this weekend to visit a refugee camp and call on the international community to respond to the ongoing humanitarian crisis of forced displacement, which he called a shipwreck of civilization. Pope Francis, who visited Lesbos in 2016, lamented that little has changed since then as he spoke with refugees at a refugee camp which holds about 2,300 people.
It is easy to stir up public opinion by instilling fear of others. Yet why do we fail to speak with equal vehemence about the exploitation of the poor, about seldom mentioned but often well-financed wars, about economic agreements where the people have to pay, about covert deals to traffic in arms, favoring the proliferation of the arms trade? The remote causes should be attacked, not the poor people who pay the consequences or are even used for political propaganda.
Voters in the Gambia have re-elected Adama Barrow as president of the small West African nation. It was the Gambia's first election since former President Yahya Jammeh fled into exile in 2017, 22 years after he seized power in a bloodless coup. Jammeh had refused to accept Barrow's previous win and was forced from power by a military alliance of other West African states. In South Africa, about 1,000 people took to a beach near Port Edward Sunday, protesting plans by Royal Dutch Shell to do seismic oil exploration in the eastern seaboard's wild coast, which environmentalists say will threaten pristine wildlife refuges. The action took place after a South African court Friday rejected an application filed by several advocates, including local fishermen and Greenpeace Africa, to stop the exploration of petroleum systems in the region. This is a fisherman at Sunday's protest.
I don't think this is helping the economy, but just bringing destruction. Here we can swim and do other things, but if Shell is coming here, I don't think we'll ever access this place.
In Serbia, thousands of protesters blocked major roads and bridges in the capital, Belgrade, and in other cities and towns Saturday in opposition to a government-backed plan allowing the Rio Tinto Corporation to build a massive lithium mine. Protesters said they've had enough of widespread pollution and are demanding clean air, water, and food in Serbia.
Of course, we go out into the streets. The environment is the most important political question. It is not right that young people stay out of politics. Politics is everything that surrounds us, and the environment in particular. So we are against Rio Tinto and all other corporations of the sort.
In the occupied West Bank, Israeli soldiers shot dead a 16-year-old Palestinian after he allegedly drove his car into a military checkpoint. The teen was identified as Mohammed Nadal Yunus. This comes as human rights advocates are condemning the killing of a Palestinian man shot dead by Israeli police after he stabbed an Israeli settler in occupied East Jerusalem. Al Jazeera reports footage by bystanders shows police continuing to shoot Mohammed Salima from point-blank range even after the 25-year-old had been knocked to the ground and no longer appeared to pose a threat. President Joe Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin are scheduled to speak via video call Tuesday amidst mounting tension over the military buildup at the Russia-Ukraine border. The U.S. and other Ukrainian allies have warned Russia could soon launch an offensive, with U.S. intelligence warning last week the Kremlin could deploy as many as 175,000 troops early next year. Russia has rejected claims of an invasion and accused NATO and others of escalating the situation. Moscow's warned of consequences if Ukraine joins NATO. In Chile, environmental advocates are demanding justice for Javiera Rojas, a 42-year-old land defender who was found dead in late November in the northern Chilean region of Antofagasta. Rojas's body was discovered in an empty home buried underneath a pile of clothes. Her hands and feet were bound. Her body had multiple wounds. She was well known for leading protests against a thermoelectric project in northern Chile. In 2016, she was involved in a campaign that successfully canceled a dam that would have stolen water from local communities and harmed wildlife. 2 men, including Rojas's partner, were placed under arrest while her death is investigated. CNN fired star anchor Chris Cuomo Saturday, just 4 days after the cable network suspended him indefinitely amidst revelations he helped his brother, disgraced former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, respond to accusations of sexual misconduct. 1 day after his suspension last week, a lawyer told CNN about another allegation of sexual misconduct against Chris Cuomo. The accusation was made by a former colleague, though it's not clear if that played a role in his firing. In September, Chris Cuomo's former boss at ABC News, Shelley Ross, revealed he once touched her inappropriately at a public gathering. In Washington, D.C., over 100 masked white supremacists from the Patriot Front paraded in front of the Lincoln Memorial and on the National Mall Saturday evening. The demonstrators wore matching blue jackets, white neck gaiters, brown boots and hats, and khaki pants similar to those worn by far-right protesters in 2017's deadly Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. They held shields, upside-down U.S. flags, and a banner that said, "Reclaim America." Bystanders booed as the leader of the hate group gave a speech. Over 24 participants reportedly found themselves stranded after the bizarre display when their ride, a rented U-Haul truck, was not able to fit all of them inside. And former Senate and Republican presidential contender Bob Dole has died at the age of 96 after a struggle with lung cancer. Dole served 4 terms in the House of Representatives before Kansas voters sent him to the Senate in 1969. He served 3 years as Senate Majority Leader before resigning in 1996 to unsuccessfully challenge then-President Bill Clinton's re-election. In April of 1990, Dole led a congressional delegation to visit Saddam Hussein in Baghdad. Later that year, Iraq invaded Kuwait. Dole would go on to support both the 91 U.S.-led assault on Iraq and the U.S.-led invasion in 2003. He attended the 2016 Republican National Convention, telling USA Today, quote, "I'm a Trumper." He also supported Trump's 2020 re-election campaign. President Biden called him a friend and ordered flags to be flown at half-staff through Thursday in honor of Bob Dole. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.